On today's show, we have an interesting topic. We're talking about, is it better to be compatible or is it better to be complementary in your relationship? Is there a preference? Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it and listen.
Thank you for tuning in. We are Tristin and Michael, and you are watching Fuse, transparent conversations for marriage, family, and relationships. We invite you to join us as we discuss topics that are thought about but not talked about. So tell your friends and family to check us out. And of course, connect with us on all our social handles at Fused Marriages. Hey, sir.
What is going on? What you do? How you doing today?
Today's a good day.
Good day?
Every day's a great day.
I like to hear that. I like to hear when you say you have good days.
Yeah, oh, you're so sweet.
I know it does. It makes me feel bad, to be honest with you.
When I have bad days, how does that make
You
you
have
feel?
bad days. Ooh, I don't want to say I avoid you, but you know, I just try to make sure I try to figure out how to make you have better moments to maybe improve that day.
Okay. You're so good. I'm
right.
so blessed. I'm so blessed, y'all. So speaking of blessing, one of our conversations today, what we're getting into, is really going to be talking about, of course, some relationships, but some of the ways in which we might make mistakes prior to getting married in what we're looking for, and then how we relate to one another. So our conversation today is about compatibility versus being complementary. Compatible
Yes.
versus complementary. So I want to go into the definition, and then I want to hear how you talk about it. And of course, we always want to hear from you. We consider this a dialogue where we share with one another. We talk about some of our experiences. You share some of yours, and you can always just put it down in the chat box because you never know who is experiencing something similar. So just kind of drop some information in there about maybe what your thoughts are on this conversation. So I'm going to read the definition to complementary versus compatibility. Mm-hmm. Compatibility is a state in which two things are able to coexist or occur together without problems or conflict.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That's compatible.
Got it.
Complementary is combining in such a way as to enhance or emphasize the qualities of each one to another.
Got it. Okay.
Okay, so compatibility versus complementary. All right, so I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Well,
what do you think about it
what I
as it
think
relates to relationships?
Relationships, yeah, right. Absolutely. I think it could apply to a lot of other things too, depending on, could be business, could be, we're talking about relationships.
Yeah.
But you touched on something before we got on, before we started. I didn't know there was an issue with the word complementary.
Yes.
I didn't know. My ignorance, I'm thinking, I didn't know it was such a negative, potentially with some people out there. Maybe y'all know what we're talking about. But explain that, because you were talking about it to me before we started recording.
Yeah.
Like, hey, did you know this meant this? And I didn't know. So let's frame.
I think that is going to be interesting in this conversation. So some of you may have heard of this term in marriage called complementarianism. So complementarianism is used a lot in evangelical Christianity, and it is the idea that the woman, may not be how it is on paper. This has just been what my experience is, and what a lot of other women, how this might have gone about being implemented. So it is really a more subservient, at least how I define it. I feel like people are going to be coming in the chat about this. But it's a subservient role to your male counterpart. So complementarianism might be like, I complement the greatness that he is. Now, again, this is not the way that it's probably written or preached or any of that, but I have never really had a good settling feeling about the word because of how it's implemented. So I'm really excited to actually have this dialogue and to see what your thoughts, and hear, of course, your feedback on how can we make being a complement really equal what I think the direction that you're going with this. But if you have heard of complementarianism, or if that's something that you've witnessed, or maybe has been preached from pulpits in your churches, I definitely want to hear what your experience with complementarianism is. If you were ever told that that's what you should be as a woman to your male spouse, I want to get some feedback, because it's never been the way that it was originally, I guess, defined to be. It was never actually actualized like that. So anyway, that's complementarianism the way that I have understood it, but the way that you are communicating it is a little bit different, and I want to jump into that. So let me hear your thoughts.
It was just interesting. I'm going to go back to what you were saying. It was just interesting to hear that kind of explanation of it because literally I went to the dictionary to pull the definition. I wasn't trying to take away or add to it, right?
Right.
So when I heard that definition, I'm like, okay, somebody made up one and started using that word with it. Because it doesn't necessarily find us. That's unfortunate.
Made up a definition. Right. Somebody made up their own definition and attached the word. That's what you mean.
Attached the word to it. So I just like Tristin was mentioning, that's not necessarily the angle we're talking about. I think it's good to explain because somebody may be listening and say, okay, hold up. No, I'm not feeling that. Or I'm not understanding that while you're talking about that. So I appreciate that aspect of it. But so one of the things is, yes, we're talking about, I guess, compatibility, right? And I think we have to make the decision, at least I'm pretty sure I've done it. Maybe you've done it. We're trying to figure out if we want to be with somebody or not be with somebody. Typically, we look at, are we compatible?
Okay.
Hey, and people will say, how compatible are you with them?
Right, you'll take a compatibility test or something like that.
Compatibility test. They got tests. They got online tests. They got all these different, exactly, right? And we kind of like, and I'm in my mind too, right? I'm thinking like, okay, yeah, I've probably done that. And that's probably my first thinking. Am I compatible with this person? You know what? I'll wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Do they wake up 6 o'clock in the morning? You know what I mean? That's a compatibility thing right there. You know, I'm a person. I'm an outdoorsy nature person. Are they an outdoorsy nature person? Which again, I think none of those things are necessarily bad, but I think it could potentially limit, right, really what you're looking for. And I guess I have to separate first when we're talking about compatibility versus having the same values, right? Okay. I think we should all have, the people that you're trying to be with, or married to, or relationship with, you should have common values. So, which in this discussion, I'm going to separate them between common values and compatibility. Those are two different things. Okay. If you will. But the thing about compatibility, it's really, I think it does limit, at least in the aspect of, hey, where's the depth of it at, right? Okay. What prohibits, I guess, if we're compatible, is there anything that's like missing from the relationship, right? Okay. Because people being compatible, but also, hey, have split up too.
Wait, now I want to make sure I go back to the definition. Sure. Because you mentioned a couple different things that you could do that people might say, oh, they're compatible because they both get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, or because they both like going outside. I know, like some of my girls, you might try to be like, oh, you can hook them up. Oh, they like sports too, or they like, so you think because you have something that's alike that means that you would be a good couple, because compatibility, one more time, two things are able to coexist without problems or conflict. And you're thinking it's because you have so much in common. They won't argue about, if we're going to watch the football game because they both like football, right? Okay, so I'm with you. Okay, so now go to what it looks like then to potentially be in a complementary relationship, since compatibility is, kind of, I guess it's homogeneous, like, or right. What is a complementary relationship look like?
No, absolutely. I think that's where we want to get to, right? So I'm gonna bring this into discussion. Never talked about before, but like the idea, right, is really, this whole discussion came about is kind of this idea of trying to be better, trying to figure out, do I have all the answers? Looking at information, trying to different angles of it, right? So this by trade, right, by my normal day job and what things I like to do, and I'm education. It's kind of, I'm an engineer. Right. As engineers, we look at information, we take it, we analyze it, and see how to improve and make it better, right? Or at least how does it affect things. Then we use that information, right, to really say, okay, can I predict what will happen? Okay. Don't worry, I'm going somewhere with it. I promise you I am. I'm gonna stick with you. So we take this information and like we use it to say this data, if we're gonna call it that, to predict, to say, okay, what's gonna happen tomorrow, next week, next year. If you're a business person, same way, engineer, technology, whatever it is, using information to predict, right? So really the whole conversation was like, okay, at least the thinking of like, I wanted to understand, what does it take to have a lasting relationship? Like, if I go and look at all the people, at least successful couples that we know or we've witnessed or watched, what do they have in common? And one thing I found that I noticed, and we can discuss, I love to hear your idea on it, is like, they were complimenting of each other, right? And I'm saying of each other. I say that on purpose, right? It's not, it wasn't that she was complimenting him or he was complimenting her, but they complimented each other. And the idea of being complementary is like, hey, you know what? I provide assistance when you need assistance. You provide assistance when I need assistance. If I get up early, which I do, right? I get up early. I may make breakfast, this, that, and the other, handle the kids in the morning. You cover the backside in the nighttime. If we were both morning people, we're not necessarily complimentary. Somebody's going to be mad at night. Like, hold on, you get them, you get them, you get them. We're going to be having
They're
an
your
argument.
kids.
Right, they're your kids. So that's one kind of example, Lisa. I think that at least you and I, right, we have a complementary way of doing things, right? You kind of the outside of the box thinking type of person. I may provide a little more structure to the thinking. But if we were both outside of the box, you get some crazy ideas, but it never gets implemented, right? Or if we always in structure, we never take chances in doing things that are unique. You know what I mean? Somebody has to be a business person, somebody be the finance person. I mean, whatever it is, you're complementing, right, in different aspects of life. So I'm thinking that it's good to be compatible. I'm not saying we shouldn't be. Compatibility is not like, oh, throw that out the window. But I would put more emphasis on, do they complement me? What are your thoughts on that?
That's good. That's good. I started thinking when you were talking, we were talking about like our own home and how critical it is that you do have somebody that's not exactly like you, but still fits. This was the image I had in my mind, so y'all roll with me, okay? I had this image in my mind of our remote to the TV.
Okay.
I know. I had this image in my mind and how you put the batteries in the remote for the remote to work. Sure. Well, you can't put two pluses together because the remote won't work. And you can't put the two negative ends of the battery together because the remote won't work. The only way that the remote will work is if you have a plus and a negative connected. And that was in my mind.
Come on, you're getting deep on it, girl. Let's go.
All right. But it made me think about, okay, if that's the way that the television functions, is that you have to have this positive, negative bond. And then I started thinking about relationships. And again, going to the you and I, Michael wakes up earlier than I do. And he will go and he'll make breakfast for the kids. But I'm not a night owl, but I definitely can stay up later than he does. So the evening responsibilities, I'm on it. But it, like, to your point, it would cause a lot of conflict. I had to process it. It would cause a lot of conflict if we both only got up early. Now, I can get up early and go work out and hang out, and you can stay up late, but our propensity is those kind of opposing positions. But what it does is it makes our house work, just like the remote to the television. And I don't know that a lot of people consider the ways in which they are different and how that helps people consciously, and how important it is to consciously think about those things, not just like, oh, it kind of fell in the gaps. That's just what happens. But to really think, okay, if your thing is, you like to start businesses, and I think that corporate is the only way to go. Not to say that anything's wrong with either of those positions, but there's going to be some sort of conflict unless I'm saying, okay, while you're starting these businesses, not necessarily us, of course, but if you're starting these businesses and I'm doing the corporate thing to support the businesses, to get the businesses to this point, then that's the compatibility versus us, because it seems like, I'm not compatibility, the complementary, because it seems like if you were only compatible, that eventually that would be conflict. That would down the road. And so talking through those things, right now you're a Longhorns fan and I'm an OU fan. And right now it's cute, but later we might, just an example. I'm just saying. Just an example because we're Texas over here. But anyway, I just wonder if people consciously consider those things or if it is really more kind of surface dialogue, and that should be something. And if you're dating, talk about that. But if you're married, still really consider, what do I bring to the table? What does my partner bring to the table? And how can we turn the things that, might be conflict, how can we now consider them in a different way? How can we put them in a place where one can be esteemed? And then recognizing what this also takes, and I want to hear your say on this because I have a lot. it also takes, I talk about this probably every show, but a real willingness to be very honest with you about where you are not strong, where the things that you might do that you really don't want to do, but you've never said it, but you resent or you're frustrated. If I have to get up early because he gets up early, and we can use this example from our relationship. I like getting up early, but not as early as he does, not as early as him. And he doesn't really like getting up late. But if neither of us get up early and neither of us are staying up late, then we miss the conversation. We miss the connection, because the day, as y'all know, days can happen. Like, life goes on, and then you're not connecting. And then you're frustrated because you haven't had an opportunity to talk about some things or just hang out. So sometimes it does take me getting up a little bit earlier so I can spend time with him in like a non-interrupted way. And sometimes it takes him staying up a little bit later, but he would have to be honest, be like, babe, I'm not real good tonight. And I have to be like, I'm not getting up at, 3:00 in the morning just so that we can talk. I'm not going to do that. So really being willing to say, this is who I am. I might be changing. I might have at one point liked certain things that I don't like anymore, but this is where I stand now. How does that fit? How can we make that work? Just the intentional conversations that we talk about a lot of times. So I have a question for you.
Sure, what you got?
I want to ask you. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask this question. All right. What are some things that you may have heard men say that they want from their woman or their future woman, and how do you categorize those as complementary, or what would you say that they tend to be more complementary, or do they tend to be more compatible things that men say that they want?
Yeah, I mean, just from my experience with the guy conversation, even my own mindset of like hearing guys talk about women and what they want and what they see, it's a little mixed, but majority of the conversations, really, they want somebody compatible, right? If they're in the video games, I want a girl to play video games too, right? Which I hold an issue with anyway. But like, if they in the sports, I want my girl to be able to go to sports games and this, that, and the other. I need somebody that's gonna be, gonna be a go-getter like me, or this, you know what I mean? So I hear that conversation a lot, and like for me, my biggest fear, at least from like somebody that's promoting want people to stay together, the right people to stay together, is that they are leaving because they're not. They're leaving because they're not. They're saying they're compatible, and not looking at themselves being complementary of each other. So somebody's gonna leave because we're compatible, but they're opposite of me. And the opposite really is that they're complementary. Right. We kind of talked about the example of, somebody's a spender, somebody's a saver. Somebody has the ability to have visions and dreams and think big, other ones put structure to it. And getting frustrated over the idea that I can't believe they think like that. I can't believe they are that. I don't see how they see that. Reality, they're seeing everything that you don't.
Ooh.
So
word.
He said no, but for real. So like the idea, that's my biggest concern. Like with relationships, like it's saying like, man, they're gonna leave because somebody that complements them is the opposite, or could be slightly different how they see and live life, and they're walking away from it, thinking that it's a bad thing, thinking they're doing a good thing, and that complementary is a bad thing. I know it's kind of like hard to wrap your mind in concept. It's like, okay, complementary, doing opposite.
I'm following you. I'm with you.
But I don't know if people out there are, but like it's like
the
idea.
Y'all got it.
Y'all got it. Hopefully y'all do, because it's like, man, it's because compatible is great. Like I said, I don't want to take anything from that.
It's important that you do have things in common.
It's very important.
Like
very
the
important.
batteries. Like it's still a battery.
Very true.
Like so. Yeah, I agree. It is important that you have things in common, but it's also important that you are valuing what you have that is not like one another.
Right. So the idea of being just complementary, I think I talked about, hey, we looked at couples, right? And I wanted to like kind of understand, I want to predict, like, hey, I want to have a lasting relationship. What does it look like? How to do it? How did they do it? So I did I took an examination of certain couples that admire this, that, and the other. But I got taught a long time ago, maybe about 6-7 years ago, a bishop, Bishop Kenneth Omer. I'll call his name out. He mentioned the term the law of first mention. That's my first time I've heard that. I was sitting in church one day. He said, "Yeah, there's this law. It's called the law of first mention." Mm-hmm. I said, "Huh, okay, what is that?" Right? And as he was talking about it, but basically said, you know what? If you have something you're trying to figure out, try to go back to the first time that it was mentioned. Okay. So in this scenario here, I said, okay, the first thing that I know about that's why they got married was Adam and Eve, okay. And God called Eve his helper. Mm-hmm. Which he didn't say she was compatible, this, that, and the other way. If you look at the word helper, it's very similar to the word complementary, right? To assist, to help, to promote. And they were each, and I add the extra definition to they were each other's helper, right? Because Adam couldn't do what he needed to do without her, and she couldn't do it with him without him. Mm-hmm. So for me, that gave the ultimate kind of understanding and say, hey, if you want to have a lasting relationship, you got to be a helper. You got to be looking for somebody that's going to help, right? And I'm saying help in the aspect of they're going to fill in the gaps that you don't have. So they may look and be different than what you think. They may not be the exact same and think the exact same way. Mm-hmm. So that kind of pushed me over the edge, saying, okay, yeah, compatibility is good. That's A1. You got to have common values. You got to have that too. Mm-hmm. But you need somebody that to complement you, right? Whenever you're trying to go pursue these big dreams, can I hold down the home front? Mm-hmm. Or it's flips, right? We're looking at it, we're thinking it's a guy that's always out there pushing. But what happened when that thing flipped? Are you okay with that? Can you compliment that?
What happened?
Yeah, what happens? She's asking that's a real question. I mean, that's a real question. You got to think, okay, and if you're married and like you can think about, okay, and you're not that, but you can become that. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's like, okay, because you're not that now that you can't turn that page and do something different tomorrow. At least, start making that progress to do that. So.
Oh, you start talking about Adam and Eve, and I had a whole moment.
Okay, what you got on it?
Well, we don't have enough time to talk about, but so often I think we distort words to mean and to twist to mean what we want them to mean. And so I've heard, obviously the stories of Adam and Eve, and she was made to be his help, and all that. But the way that you just dialogued about, the idea of filling in the gaps, I like that so much. I think that is probably a more accurate, because if you keep reading, it says, I gave them dominion, and they rule. Yep. So the idea of we're doing this thing together, but we're filling in one another's gaps. Mm-hmm. It's really, what you're talking about is really having each other's back for real. Not just in language. I think it sounds cute to be able to say, like, I got you, boo, because I really do got you. But it's easier to say that than to be that. To really, okay, maybe in this season, because when I went back to complementarianism, it really was, I'm just the help to him. It was never this idea of a flipped scenario where, what if she's the entrepreneur? What if she's the one that's out in front? And I don't say that to turn this into a gender conversation, but I do think it's really important to know that this thing works both ways. You help me and I help you. And then there has to be a conversation about what that help looks like. Right. Is this helpful? Is this something, hey, I'm really good at ideas. You're really good at putting feet to them. I'm really good at, the cleaning. You're really good at the cooking. I'm really good. What does it look like for us to be a team? We don't always play the same position. At the same time, maybe, I always use my sports. It's not to say necessarily that the running back and the quarterback don't have similar skill sets.
Right.
They're on the same team, but they play certain positions on that team. Now, you can have somebody that's in the huddle or that's in the locker room or outside of the game that plays this role better, but really being able to speak to, in this game, in this play, this is what this looks like. Yeah. This is how we're going to make this work for this time in this season. Because let me tell you, I've followed football for a really long time, and there were some really great players that the things that they did off the field were even better than some of the stuff that they've done on the field. And I only say that because this is a season. You know, in sports, we have seasons. In life, we have seasons. And you never know who's going to play what role in what season, but there still has to be a dialogue about where we're going. And that's why we always say ours is every October. You should be having a business meeting with your partner to talk about the areas of complementary and compatibility. Hey, in this season, what does this look like? Because you're still the same person, but how do you fit together? How does this thing work now that the kids are in school, or now that the kids are teenagers, or now that they're in college, or now that I've started this business, or now that we've moved to this new place, or now that, you know, my in-laws have moved in? These things are conversations that need to happen, because maybe I was a nurturer when our kids were little, and now I'm a nurturer to the in-laws. Or maybe I'm starting a business that has to do with creating home health care, or whatever the thing is. There's a million different scenarios, but I really think that this is a really big conversation that people need to have more of. So I know we're winding down the time. I want to give you the last word on this, because this was really interesting, and we definitely want to hear from you guys. So take the last word.
Yeah, no, I think you summed it up very, very, very well. I appreciate the sports analogy. I think people can connect with that. But the one question I would probably leave people with, they need to ask themselves, and really they should be asking their significant other, it's really one simple question: how can I help you?
How can I help you?
That. How can I help you? If you're asking each other that question, then literally you're saying, okay, how can I compliment you in the best way possible in this season and this for this thing that we're trying to do?
That's really good.
So yeah, that'd be my one thing I would say.
How can I help you? We encourage y'all to ask your spouse that and see what their response is. See what that looks like. So thank you guys for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. Make sure that you connect with us on all of our social media handles at Fused Marriages. And we'll be sure to connect back with you. As always, let's talk about it.